home hid a murdered soul, waiting for revenge.
Through the stern of our summer.
Would you survive, knowing something inside your home wants you dead? Tonight, you'll witness a story that has haunted families for generations. Welcome to Grimmora. Tonight's tale is unlike anything you've heard before. It begins with a family who believed they had finally found peace inside their dream home, but behind its walls, something was waiting, watching, hungry for the blood of those who dared to disturb it. They will discover secrets buried deep beneath the floors they walk upon, secrets that should never have been unearthed. A murdered soul, silenced in cold blood, refuses to rest, and as its whispers turn into screams, the line between the living and the dead begins to shatter. Tonight you'll witness a haunting that does not fade when the sun rises, a curse that leaves scars carved into generations. And if you stay with me, if you dare watch until the very end, you may begin to wonder if your own home is truly silent. They had been searching for months, scrolling through endless listings, driving down winding roads, visiting houses that were either too small, too expensive, or simply lacked that feeling of home. And then they found it, a countryside house resting on the edge of a small town most people had forgotten. Surrounded by dense woods, its crooked roof and weathered walls carried the weight of a century. To most, it might have looked too old, too dark, even unwelcoming. But to the Collins family, it looked perfect. A fresh start, a new beginning, their dream home. The rain was relentless the day they arrived. The sky hung heavy, dark clouds swelling until they seemed to crush the earth beneath them. Each drop smacked against the windshield in thick, uneven rhythms, like impatient fingers drumming. Inside the car, the family sat in silence. David, the father, gripped the steering wheel too tightly, his knuckles pale. Beside him, his wife, Claire, watched the silhouette of the house emerging through the rain. Their two children, Sophie and Ethan, pressed their faces against the windows, eyes wide. The house loomed larger the closer they got. Its shadow stretched across the road as if reaching for them. When they finally stepped out, the air was colder than it should have been for late autumn. The rain soaked them instantly, but the chill that slithered beneath their clothes wasn't from the storm. It was something else, something older. The front door groaned when David unlocked it, the sound echoing into the vast, empty interior. The air smelled different. Stale, yes, but also faintly metallic, like rust or old blood. Claire brushed it off. Old houses always smell strange at first, she said, forcing a smile. But Sophie wrinkled her nose and tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mom, it smells like something died. Inside, shadows clung stubbornly to the corners, even after the lights flickered on. The living room stretched wide, its wooden floorboards scarred with years of footsteps. The wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing older layers beneath, each with its own forgotten history. Ethan, the youngest, ran ahead laughing. His small footsteps echoed too loudly in the emptiness. Look, it's huge! His laughter bounced back to him, distorted as though someone else had laughed along. David frowned. Hey, slow down, careful with the stairs. The house shifted when the boy ran, as though exhaling after years of holding its breath. A faint groan moved through the beams above. By nightfall, the rain hadn't stopped. The storm lashed against the windows, rattling the glass. Boxes sat unopened in the hallway. Claire tried to make the kitchen livable, while David busied himself with the ancient fuse box in the basement. That was when he noticed it, the smell. It grew stronger the deeper he went, thick, sour, almost unbearable. It clung to the air in the basement like a warning. He covered his mouth, shining his flashlight over the damp stone walls. Mold spread in patches. Water dripped steadily from somewhere unseen. But there was something else, a section of the floor slightly raised, as though the earth beneath had shifted. The beam of light trembled in his hand. A sound rose behind him. Soft, fragile footsteps. He whipped around, heart pounding, but no one was there. Upstairs, Sophie sat at the kitchen table with a crayon in her hand. She wasn't drawing the house. She wasn't drawing her family. She was drawing him, a tall figure, thin as a shadow, with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched too wide. "Who's that?" Claire asked, frowning at the paper. Sophie didn't look up. Her voice was matter-of-fact, almost cold. "He lives here." Claire's chest tightened. "Honey, no one else lives here. Just us." Sophie finally looked up, her expression eerily blank. "He told me not to tell you." The first night was restless. The wind clawed at the shutters. The rain hammered relentlessly. And in the silence between thunderclaps, the house whispered. It was faint, so faint they might have thought it was just the storm. But deep in the floorboards, in the walls, there were sounds that didn't belong. A dragging shuffle, a quiet knock, breathing that wasn't theirs. Claire jolted awake sometime after midnight. She swore she heard someone moving upstairs. David dismissed it. "It's an old house. Wood creaks, pipes groan, that's all." But the sound didn't fade. Slow, deliberate footsteps, one after another, traced the length of the upstairs hallway. David grabbed a flashlight and crept up the stairs. Each step he took was matched by the sound above, as though someone was walking with him, staying just out of sight. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched long and dark. The beam of his flashlight skimmed across doors and wallpaper, across shadows that seemed to ripple when the light touched them. "Hello?" The footsteps stopped. The silence was worse. By morning, nothing was said. Not about the smell, not about the drawing, not about the footsteps. The family pushed forward, convincing themselves it was nerves, exhaustion, the stress of moving. But the house was awake now, and what they would discover beneath the floorboards was far worse. It began softly. So soft at first they thought it was their imagination. Claire was unpacking dishes in the kitchen when she heard it. Her name. Claire. A breath, no louder than the rustle of paper, floated behind her. She spun around. Nothing. Only the slow drip of a leaking faucet. She forced a laugh, shaking her head. Just the wind. But it came again. This time closer. Claire. Her skin prickled. The sound was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It was something in between, something that didn't belong in the living world. Upstairs, Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor, crayons scattered around her. She was drawing again. This time, not a single figure, but many. Long, thin shapes pressed against the outline of a wall, their mouths open in silent screams. Her brother Ethan peeked in, frowning. "Who are they?" Sophie didn't look up. "They're the ones in the walls. They keep talking. Don't you hear them?" Ethan shivered. "No." Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper, almost mimicking theirs. "They say they want out." When Claire later found the drawing, her stomach turned. The figures had no eyes, only hollow spaces where eyes should have been. And across the page, scribbled in jagged letters, Sophie had written, "Let us in." That night, the lights began to flicker. At first, David blamed the storm. "Old wiring. I'll check the circuits tomorrow." But the flickering wasn't random. It pulsed on, off, like a heartbeat. And when the light dimmed to its weakest, the whispers grew stronger. They called each name in turn. Claire, David, Sophie, Ethan. The children cried, covering their ears. But still the voices seeped in, as if crawling directly into their heads. Claire stumbled into the bathroom, her nerves frayed. She splashed water on her face, staring into the cracked mirror above the sink. Steam from a hot shower fogged the glass. And then letters appeared. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but slowly, deliberately, words formed across the condensation. "We remember." Her breath hitched. She wiped the mirror frantically. The message vanished. David rushed in at her scream. "What happened?" She pointed at the mirror, her hand trembling. It said something. It was written there." David inspected it, lips tight. "You're exhausted. You're seeing things." But deep in his eyes, there was fear. Because when the fog crept back, the words reappeared. The days that followed were heavy with silence and suspicion. Every creak in the floor sent Claire into panic. David spent hours in the basement, convinced something was hidden there. Sophie whispered to her drawings, ignoring everyone else. Ethan cried at night, swearing he saw faces in the corners of his room. The house was pulling them apart. Claire accused David of dismissing her fears. David snapped back, claiming she was frightening the children. Sophie grew colder, more withdrawn, while Ethan begged them to leave. And always the whispers lingered, not just calling names now, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes growling in tones no human throat could produce. One afternoon, Claire found herself in town. The storm had cleared, but her nerves had not. She stopped at a small grocery store, her hands trembling as she gathered supplies. An elderly woman behind the counter studied her carefully. "You're the ones who moved into the old house, aren't you?" Claire hesitated. "Yes, the one on Willow Road." The woman's face hardened. "You shouldn't be there." Claire's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" The woman leaned closer, her voice sharp. "Houses remember things. Especially that one. Blood soaks deep. It never leaves." Before Claire could ask more, another customer entered, and the woman turned away. But her last words echoed in Claire's mind. "You should have never come here." That night, tension boiled over. Claire insisted they leave. The whispers, the mirror, the drawings. "You can't tell me none of this is real." David shouted back. "We can't just run. This is our home now. I'll fix it. I can fix it." Sophie sat silently in the corner, humming a low, tuneless melody. Ethan sobbed in his room, clutching a flashlight that flickered in his small hands. The house seemed to feed on their arguments. Every slam of a door, every raised voice made the whispers louder, almost gleeful. Later, as the family tried to sleep, Claire felt it. Something touched her shoulder. She gasped, turning over, but David lay fast asleep, his back turned. Her skin burned where the invisible fingers had pressed. From down the hall, Ethan screamed. They rushed to his room. He pointed at the wall, tears streaming down his face. "They touched me. Hands came out of the wall. They tried to pull me in." Sophie stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "They don't like being ignored," she whispered. The next morning, David finally admitted he'd seen something too. He entered the bathroom and froze. The mirror was fogged over again, though no shower had been running. Words sprawled across it. "Get out." But when he blinked, the message changed. "OR, stay, forever." He stumbled back, his breath ragged. His reflection didn't move with him. By the end of the week, the family barely spoke. Their laughter was gone, meals were eaten in silence. Sleep was restless, if it came at all. The whispers were constant now, a low drone filling every corner of the house. Sometimes they overlapped, dozens of voices calling all at once. Sometimes they hissed in unison, "We are here, we are here, we are here." Claire pressed her hands over her ears, sobbing. David slammed tools against the basement floor, desperate to find what was buried. And Sophie no longer needed her crayons. She simply sat, her lips moving in rhythm with the whispers, as if repeating everything they said. If the walls of your house whispered your name over and over, would you leave, or would you stay, hoping it was all in your head? Then came the night. The air was unnaturally still. Even the crickets outside were silent. It began with a faint sobbing. At first they thought it was Sophie or maybe Ethan crying in their rooms, but the sound didn't come from upstairs. It came from inside the walls. Muffled cries, desperate and broken, bleeding through the plaster like water through cracks. The family gathered in the hallway, staring at the walls as the sobbing grew louder, then sharper, the sound of a woman weeping, begging, and then screaming. It pierced through every room, rattling the windows, shaking the floor beneath their feet. David covered his ears. Ethan collapsed in tears. Claire clutched her daughter, but Sophie only stared at the wall, her expression cold. "Do you hear her?" Sophie whispered. "She's been here all along." And that night, they heard the crying of someone who wasn't alive. The storm outside had eased into a steady drizzle, but the house itself was far from calm. The Harringtons had endured weeks of whispers, flickering lights, and the creeping sense that the very walls were aware of their every move. Yet nothing prepared them for the history clawing its way to the surface. It began in the attic. Michael Harrington had gone up to check for the source of the strange scratching sounds that had kept them awake for 3 nights straight. Armed with a dim flashlight, he pushed aside cobwebs and dust that seemed centuries old. His beam caught something sticking out between the warped floorboards, a bundle of photographs, edges curled, tied with twine darkened by time. The photos showed a family from the early 1900s. Somber faces, stiff clothing, children staring into the lens with hollow eyes. Yet one photograph made Michael's stomach tighten. In the background, through the cracked window of the same house they now lived in, a shadow stood. A man, blurred but distinct, with an expression that seemed to follow him across the years. When Michael brought the photos downstairs, his wife Anna whispered, "That man, I've seen him." 2 days later, their youngest Sarah was playing near the basement steps when she uncovered something buried beneath loose stones, a small leather-bound book stained a deep rust color. Anna thought it was mold, but when she brushed her fingers over it, she knew. It was blood. The diary belonged to a man named Thomas Aldridge. His entries began innocently, notes about farming, the hardships of rural life, a wife who was often ill, but soon the writing grew frantic, filled with paranoia and terror. Thomas wrote of hearing whispers in the walls, of shadows moving at night, of his belief that someone was living in the house with him. The final pages were smeared, but one line was still clear. "If anyone finds this, know that they buried me beneath the boards, and I will never forgive." Anna dropped the book, her hands trembling. "Buried me beneath the boards." That night, the house came alive. Scratches appeared along the hallway walls, jagged and fresh, as though claws had raked through the plaster. Sarah swore she saw hands pressing out from inside the walls themselves, fingers leaving deep impressions before vanishing back into the wood. Michael stayed awake, gripping a baseball bat, listening as whispers slithered through the house, each one calling his name with more clarity than before. "Michael, Michael, why do you hide from me?" The next evening, the house forced its truth on them. As the family sat together in the living room, the air thickened, the lights flickered, and suddenly the room was no longer their own. It shifted, rippling like a mirage. They were no longer in 2025, but in 1911. They saw Thomas Aldridge alive, pacing in terror. His wife begged him to stay quiet, to stop talking about the man in the walls. But Thomas knew the truth. He had discovered a squatter, a violent drifter who had taken refuge in their basement. One night, Thomas confronted him. The drifter snapped, bludgeoning Thomas to death in his own kitchen. And then, the killer hid the body. He pried up the floorboards with a claw hammer and buried Thomas beneath them, sealing the secret with nails and silence. The flashback dissolved, leaving the Harringtons gasping, their living room walls groaning as if they remembered the murder themselves. The Harringtons tried to cling to faith. They gathered in the dining room, holding hands, whispering prayers. Anna's voice shook as she begged for protection. Michael tried to keep steady, though sweat dripped down his temple. Sarah, small and trembling, repeated, "Please don't let him come for us." Then, without warning, a deafening bang thundered through the house. Every window shattered at once, showering glass across the floor. Candles blew out. The prayers turned to screams as the walls shuddered. Pictures crashing down, the floor vibrating beneath their feet. The banging came again, this time from under the floorboards. Something wanted out. The next day, unable to escape the gnawing dread, Michael returned to the diary. He read it by the weak glow of a lantern, each page heavier than the last. Thomas's writing revealed something no one wanted to believe. The murderer hadn't left after hiding the body. He had stayed in the house for years, moving through the walls, watching the family, whispering to them until they too lost their minds. And then the chilling realization hit Michael. Those same whispers were now haunting them. As Michael turned the final page, the ink seemed to writhe, bleeding across the paper, rearranging itself into fresh words. I never left. I am still here. And just as he read those words aloud, the family heard it, faint at first, then rising in a chorus of anguish. The crying of a man, but not a man who lived. A cry of someone who had been murdered and who refused to stay silent. When they dug deeper into the diary, they realized the murderer had never left. The storm rages outside. Rain hammers against the windows in relentless sheets, each strike like skeletal fingers rapping on the glass. Inside, the family sits scattered, their nerves already frayed from the weeks of unrelenting disturbances. The room is dimly lit by the orange glow of a single lamp. Its bulb flickers weakly, as though resisting the darkness pressing from all sides. Claire sits stiffly on the couch, arms wrapped protectively around Sophie, the youngest child. Michael, the father, stands by the fireplace, staring into the flames with a distant, fractured gaze. Ethan huddles at the edge of the carpet, sketching nervously in his notebook. Suddenly, the lamp bulb bursts with a sharp pop. Glass scatters across the carpet. Darkness swallows the room whole. A beat of silence, then voices, dozens of them, hissing, moaning, calling. The walls seem alive, groaning and breathing. Whispers from all directions. Leave us. He is here. Blood must answer blood. He drops his pencil. His notebook falls open, revealing a page. A figure, crudely drawn, towers over the sketched outline of their house. Its eyes are black pits. Sophie begins to cry softly. Make them stop. Please make them stop. The floorboards creak upstairs. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Claire grips Sophie tighter. Terrified, she whispers, "There's no one up there. There can't be." Yet the steps continue, slowly pacing, crossing from one end of the hallway to the other. The family gathers, hoping the harsh fluorescent kitchen light will keep the dark at bay. Ethan clings to his sketchbook, refusing to close it. Michael grips the counter, knuckles white, eyes darting to every corner of the room. A spoon rattles in the sink, then a glass, then every drawer slams open at once. Utensils clatter to the floor like metallic rain. The refrigerator door swings wide, then slams shut. Cabinets burst open, plates flying across the room. One shatters against the wall, narrowly missing Claire. She screams, "Stop it! Leave us alone!" The house answers with a shriek, a sound like steel tearing. The lights flicker violently, strobing the family's terror in jagged snapshots, and then silence. Everything falls still, a breathless beat, then every chair in the room slides back simultaneously, scraping against the floor, leaving the family standing exposed in the center. Claire calls for Sophie. Her voice echoes down the hall, breaking with panic. No answer. Ethan insists he saw her wander toward the basement door. His hands shake as he points. The basement door is ajar. Cold air seeps out. Michael, unsteady, takes the first step downward, his face pale, sweat trickling at his temples. The basement is darker than usual. The single bulb sways, casting long, twitching shadows. At the far end, Sophie stands in front of the wall, her tiny hand pressed against it. Her lips move, whispering. Claire rushes forward, desperate. "Sophie, what are you doing?" Sophie turns, her eyes distant, voice flat. She whispers, "He says he's still here. He says Daddy knows why." Claire freezes, horror etching across her face. Michael's eyes widen, darting from Sophie to the wall. His breathing grows ragged. No, I didn't." The bulb overhead shatters. Darkness engulfs them. Sophie screams. When the light flickers back to life, she is gone. Claire falls to her knees, sobbing. "Sophie!" Ethan clutches her tightly, crying. From the corner, a low laugh slithers from the shadows. Michael paces in the dark. His reflection in the dresser mirror no longer matches his movements. The reflection smirks when he does not, tilts its head, whispers something inaudible. Michael grabs the mirror, shaking it, screaming at it. Get out of my head! The mirror cracks violently, a jagged fracture splitting his reflection's face. Blood seeps from the crack, real blood dripping onto the floor. Michael stumbles back, horrified. Claire enters fearfully. Michael, what are you doing? He turns, his eyes are hollow, ringed with shadows. He's not gone. He's here, always here, watching me, following me, because I was the one who... He cuts himself off, gripping his head, groaning as if his skull is splitting open. Claire approaches cautiously, trembling. Michael, you're scaring me. He looks up at her, and for a fleeting moment, his eyes are not his own. Black pits, empty. The house grows unnaturally quiet, a hush so thick it feels like the walls themselves are holding their breath. Then a voice breaks the veil, not the families, not the ghosts. If your loved one changed overnight, would you believe it was them or something else? The family reunites, huddled together. The house no longer whispers, it screams. Every door in the house slams violently. Windows rattle until the glass shatters, rain and wind tearing inside. The fireplace roars, flames leaping out, clawing toward them. Ethan's drawings scatter into the air, pages swirling. Each sketch now moves, the figures within writhing, their mouths open in silent screams. Blood begins to drip from the ceiling, slow at first, then pouring like rain indoors. Claire shrieks, pulling Ethan against her. Michael stands in the center, arms outstretched as if welcoming it. He screams, "Take me then! If it's me you want, take me!" The voices crescendo into a deafening roar. And then silence. The silence is worse than the screams, oppressive, deadly. The family breathes in ragged gasps. They cling to each other. Then from the basement comes the sound. Not water, something thicker, heavier. Claire edges toward the basement door, trembling. She opens it slowly. From below, the smell of iron and rot hits her. Ethan begins to cry. Sophie's voice echoes faintly from the depths, singing a lullaby she should not know. Michael stares into the dark void of the basement steps. His face is pale. His lips tremble as he whispers, "It's too late. It's already begun." The walls groan, the floorboards crack. A shadow moves, rising from below. And then came the night of blood. The storm outside reaches its peak. Lightning illuminates the house in violent flashes, revealing the horror that has fully taken shape. The house had waited long enough. Its rage, its grief, its endless hunger was ready to be unleashed. The family sits huddled in the living room, praying for dawn. But then every light bulb bursts at once, plunging the house into complete darkness. The air grows unbearably cold. Their breath fogs as if they were trapped in a freezer. Suddenly, a shadow stretches across the walls, but it doesn't belong to anyone in the room. It crawls upward, splitting into dozens of smaller shadows, twisting like broken limbs. From the ceiling, a deep thundering groan echoes as though the house itself were alive. The children cling tightly to their mother, trembling. Then, glass shatters. Every window in the house explodes inward, showering the floor with shards. A violent wind surges through the halls, carrying whispers that sound like screaming. Panicked, Michael grabs the keys and runs for the front door. He yanks it open, only to find the same living room staring back at him. The door leads back into the house. No matter how many times they try, front door, back door, even the windows, they are funneled back inside. The house has sealed itself. There would be no escape. Not until the house had taken what it was owed. Michael staggers, clutching his chest. His voice cracks as he whispers that he can't breathe. His hands tremble uncontrollably. The family watches in horror as his eyes roll completely black. When he speaks again, it's not his voice. It's a guttural growl, layered with pain and rage. "You buried me here. You silenced me, but now I will silence you." He lifts a shard of broken glass, his movements jerky, unnatural. His wife cries out his name, begging him to fight it, but the spirit has fully taken root. And then, silence. The storm outside dies suddenly. The wind stops. Even the creaking of the house fades. Only the faint, sorrowful sound of a piano begins to play, soft, hesitant notes drifting from somewhere deep within the house. The same lullaby the murdered soul once knew. The family holds their breath. Michael stands perfectly still, head bowed as though listening. The piano stops mid-note. It was the quiet before the storm. The chaos resumes. The silence shatters. Doors slam open and shut violently. The walls bleed with shadow. Furniture lifts into the air and crashes against the floor. Michael, now completely overtaken, lunges at his family. They scramble, ducking and weaving through the flying debris, screaming his name, hoping he can hear them through the spirit's grip. Claire grabs the children and hides them in a corner, shielding them with her body. Tears streak down her face as she begs the house to let them go. Michael, possessed and snarling, steps closer. His shadow stretches unnaturally long across the wall until it engulfs them completely. Just when it seems the family won't survive, the storm outside abruptly ceases. Michael collapses to the floor, unconscious. The house grows quiet again, as though nothing had ever happened. The family clings to each other, trembling, whispering prayers of relief. They believe they've survived. But then, the final shot lingers on the cracked wall, where a single shadow remains. Its head slowly turns toward the camera. They thought they had survived the night, but the soul's revenge was only beginning. The family sits broken, exhausted, but alive, barely. The storm outside has ended, yet the house still feels heavy, pulsing with unseen rage. They had survived the night's wrath, but the house was not finished with them. Desperate, Claire calls for help. At dawn, an old medium, a woman draped in dark cloth, her eyes clouded with age, arrives at the doorstep. She doesn't knock, she simply enters, as if the house has been expecting her. "You cannot fight what dwells here. You must face it," she says. Candles are lit in every corner. The family gathers in a circle, clutching each other's hands as the medium begins to chant. The flames flicker violently, bending as though pulled toward the center of the room. The air grows dense. The medium asks, "What do you want?" "Justice?" A voice emerges, not from Michael this time, but from the very walls themselves. "Justice. No, I want more. I want your name, your blood, your children." Claire gasps, realizing the truth. This was never about vengeance alone. The murdered soul doesn't just crave justice, it craves their entire bloodline. Their family was not random prey. They are tied to the original betrayal that led to the spirit's death. It wasn't revenge. It was inheritance. The medium presses forward, chanting louder, urging the family to repeat the words after her. At first, the flames flicker with rhythm, but then chaos erupts. Candles blow out one by one. The walls groan and crack, dust raining from the ceiling. The ground shakes, knocking furniture over. Flames suddenly surge upward, licking the ceiling, casting grotesque shadows across the family's faces. The medium screams for them to continue, but her voice is drowned by wailing cries echoing through the halls. The entire house feels alive, thrashing, collapsing inward. In the midst of fire and chaos, the youngest child suddenly slips free from their mother's grasp. Small footsteps echo across the floor. The child walks toward the swirling darkness at the center of the ritual. Claire cries out, but the medium holds her back, whispering, "Let them go!" It is the only way. The child stands before the writhing spirit, trembling, but instead of fear, they whisper words of empathy. "I'm sorry you were hurt. I'm sorry they forgot you. You don't have to be angry anymore. You don't have to be alone." For the first time, the spirit falters. Its roar weakens. The shadows flicker and retreat. The flames dim. The voice, once hateful and venomous, softens into something like a sigh. The house grows eerily still. The spirit fades, but not completely. Michael collapses, freed from possession. The family rushes to the child, holding them tightly. The medium lowers her head, exhausted. The spirit had listened, and for a moment it seemed peace had been found. But in the corner, where shadows cling deepest, a faint silhouette remains, watching, waiting, not gone, not yet. Weeks later, the house sits empty. The family has long since fled. For the first time in years, the property is sold. The camera pans across the street as a new family arrives, smiling, unloading boxes from their car. A moving truck idles in the driveway. Children laugh as they chase each other into the backyard. Inside, the camera drifts down into the basement. Dust coats the air. The silence is suffocating. Then a slow creak. The basement door swings open on its own. A shadow slips across the floor. Some houses never let go. A family's dream home turned into their deepest nightmare. A murdered soul's rage unleashed at last. And one truth carved into the very bones of the walls. Some places remember blood forever. But ask yourself this. If you discovered your home was built over a hidden grave, would you still sleep soundly in it? Or would every creak in the night remind you that someone is still there? If you survived this story, subscribe to Grimmora for more, because the next tale will be like nothing you've ever imagined. And if you dare, watch the next video waiting